Today we're going to be looking at a humble sparrow and we're going to sketch him. The basic shapes as usual, which is a big egg shape with a little egg shape and a few details around the side. But with no more to do, let's get stuck in because I'm not going to over analyze this. Right, let's see, there he is, look. So what I want to do today, we'll probably spend a little bit more time drawing this thing, and then we'll just throw a little bit of colour at it towards the end. I mean, it's a bit dingy, but I hope you can see everything. But you all have got the reference picture, which I supplied, and you can either download it, print it, or have it on a tablet or something similar while we do it. Right, oops. There. To start off with, we're just going to try and get this egg shape and draw this really lightly with a pencil. Just start doing very, very light lines like that, because we're going to feel our way into this. So light lines to start off with, really light lines, because we're going to firm these up later. So when I say light lines, look, I've just started to feel my way into this with this basic egg shape. And I'm trying to get the angle right. He's kind of at that angle. The body is just an egg shape. And there's a secondary little egg shape on the top that sits around about there. So can you see we're just making really, really light lines. I could go lighter than this, but you wouldn't be able to see them if I did. But that's where I am, look. That's how I'm starting. And I'm kind of looking at this and I'm modifying it all the time. And then I'm carrying on that angle there. You see the tail will come straight down at that angle. It's about slightly less than 45 degrees. So the tail's kind of coming out like that. And interesting now, I'm trying to line things up. So follow the line of the tail and you'll find that if you carry that line of that tail, it just about hits his beak. So I know that if I come across there, his little beak's going to be about here. So I'm just putting that in, nice and light, a little triangle. I can see now the body's slightly thin because I've put that beak in line with the tail, and I can see that his chest comes out just as far as that beak, which it isn't doing here. So now, because these are so light, I can modify these and I can bring that chest out now, and I can see now that's a much more accurate shape. His chest's coming out as far as his beak. The beak might be a little bit big. So this is the point at which I'm just making all my nice adjustments, getting everything in the right place. I've got my beak in, I've got my chest in, and I'm looking at where his head comes out from behind his beak. And using the lines that I've already got down, I'm now starting to make little more definite lines. I'm coming down. There's not a lot of difference here between that egg shape and that big egg shape. Kind of joins in one, turns it into one big mass. It's quite important to get these shapes around. Don't just draw what we think of as a bird, head, body, beak. Look at everything here as shapes joining up with other shapes. Otherwise, you'll end up with something that looks like a pigeon or a parrot. And it won't say house sparrow. But if you try and get things in the right place, which is what we're doing here, take your time, don't rush it, just make sure that things are in the right place. And keep darting around and keep moving your eye backwards and forwards between this and this. And just get everything starting to line up. And as you get more and more certain that things are in the right place, you can start to make a more definite line. So now he's got a wing, obviously, and the wing is a kind of long triangular shape. And you can see that his wing here comes down from the line of his beak. So I'm cross-referencing all the time. I'm looking at the way that lines up with that, and that lines up with that. The wing kind of lines up with the tail. And this little feather sticks out there. So if I now stop and have a look at this, I can see that I'm slightly out. I can see that I'm coming down too steeply there because this wing is below his tummy there, and it's not. So just stop. Don't panic. Just think, okay, well, let's bring that body a little bit further up there. You can use a rubber if you like. If you're getting confused, you can rub out. That's not forbidden. But now just move that tail up a bit. And now I can move that wing up a bit. And now that wing is now above his tummy down here, which is how it should be. Because when you get everything in the right place, it'll all start to make sense. So now can you see it's all starting to make sense, and it's all starting to look a bit more realistic. And now that I know things are starting to land in the right place, I can start to be a little more certain with my marks. Got a bit of scrap paper here that I'm going to lay over there because I'm going to do a bit of work on the head. Now the head is quite important because when somebody looks at this, they're going to probably go straight to the head because that's where most of the interest lies. So let's spend a bit of time looking at this head. Right. So we can see this nice little stubby beak, and we can see that the beak, there's a line in there that determines the nature of this beak. So it's a short stubby beak, and it just comes over the front of his top beak, just comes over his bottom beak because he eats seeds and things. So it's a small, strong beak. And what's interesting, look, it comes inside his head. This is quite nice because it shows you that his head's tilted slightly towards us because his beak goes into his head like that, and then his head comes around the far side of his beak like that, and it comes down the near side of his beak like that. You see what I mean? So now you can now see that his head's turning towards us, which gives it 3 dimension, which is lovely. So he's got a black bib, which will come in and we'll paint later on. But let's try and get his eye in the right place. So look how wide his head is there. His eye is quite down near the front, and if you follow his beak in, it's kind of about there. So just take a while. It's only a little eye, but just take a while to try and get it in the right place. So if you get it in the right place, then he'll look like a sparrow and not like a parrot or a pigeon. So again, I'm just feeling my way in there. He's got a nice little white or very pale ring around his eye. And his eye then sits in. You can see how much darker it is here. It's kind of sitting in a little dip. So let's just, and he's got a lovely black mask as well. So we can start, if we want, to just put a little bit of detail in there. It's got a black mask that wraps around the back of his eye like that. So I'm just starting to make a few marks. I've got my shapes in. I'm happy that things are in the right place. And so I'm now just going to start to put some of his markings in. So he's got a black bib. It comes around there, and you know, the black bib itself, his bib and his mask is a shape. So we can put that in as a shape as well, you see, like that. And now I've got all the shapes in, I can start to make a few more interesting marks, because we want to try also, instead, you know, we've got the shapes in, we want to try and give the sense that these are feathers. And also these feathers, look at the direction in which they go. They splay out. It's almost like water flowing. These feathers flow over his body like this. So when we start to draw these feathers, we want to try and do that. So the feathers that are coming over his head like this, I'm just starting to put in a few little feather marks. But wherever I'm doing these marks, I'm making marks that flow in the right direction. And also his beak is very dark, and his beak is made out, well, I don't know what a bird's beak is made out of, maybe somebody can tell me, but it's certainly not feathers. So we can do that. We can do his beak in a different way than we do his feathers. We can just shade it and make it solid. We'll paint this later and put some real tone in. But for now, let's just get some feather direction in. So that, you see, I'm starting to get his feathers moving in the right direction. Let's have a quick look at him overall. He's got a nice white collar that comes around there. So I'm going to make a point of making that there. And the light is very soft light, but it's kind of coming down here like this. So it's making his white bib at the front very white. So we're going to make a point of leaving that white when we paint it. But I'm now just feeling my way in. I'm always following the flow of his feathers with my marks like this. But I'm just starting to put in, I'm starting to block in these shapes for plumage. See, he's got a little orange patch on his back there. I haven't actually got the outline defined clearly. I'm still working towards my sketchy marks. But now that I know that things are starting to fall into the right place, I can make this outline a little stronger. It's maybe a little bit overweight, my drawing. I'm just going to bring that down, nice long sweeping back. Down to his tail. You can see his far wing just peeping over the top of his back there. So we can put that in. Like so. And his near wing here. These kind of lovely lollipop stick shapes. And some of these marks can be very quick and spontaneous. because people are going to look first at his head. So we'll spend a bit more time on his head in a bit. And down here, we're just going to be quick. And just put scribbly, almost scratchy, quick, spontaneous marks in here. Always remember to try and get as many different quality marks from your pencil as you possibly can. You can press down and get a nice black. You can move quickly and get lovely sharp dashes. You can do light sketchy marks. See down here. See under here is in deep shadow. We're going to do that with paint. But I'm just using this opportunity here to make a few pencil marks. See, look at the quality of the, the quality of these feathers here. Look how crisscrossy and, well, I wouldn't say they're scruffy, but I wonder if we can try and achieve this effect. These feathers are starting to break up a little bit. So maybe we could suggest that with a few crisscrossy lines. Just make it look fluffier. And down here again, this bottom edge here, look, we've got a few bedraggled feathers there, but then they start to come down in a more softer curvy way like that. At the moment it's just a bird without a body, so let's try and get a leg in. Look at that angle of that leg there where he's hanging onto the branch. The branch is kind of chopping him right in half like so. So we need him to be sitting somewhere, so we can get a branch in like that. Then this leg, kind of come, just eyeball it and see that that leg is coming down there like that. Look at the angle. Try and match the angle up. And his foot comes round the branch. And just, again, I'm doing this quite sketchily to start off with. And then when I realize I've got things in the right place, I can start to make more definite lines. Once I know that things are lining up, I can be more certain. And I can then start to look at the nature of this foot. Don't know if you can see from this, but the light's hitting this, it's got a shine on the top, but it's certainly not made out of feathers. So don't use your feathery type marks. Use a claw mark. The marks are a bit more defined. And on the back here, look, these are pretty much in shadow. So once I know they're in the right place, I can put them in with a nice thick mark. Spiky claws. And then you can see the quality of this branch here now. You can see that it's got little veins coming down it. So now I know the branch is in the right place. I can start to put some of those marks in as well. And underneath here, underneath his leg, you see his legs going to be stopping the light hitting the branch. So you can just put a few sharp marks in there and get it nice and dark. And we're kind of halfway there now, starting to take shape. I think just looking at this, his tail's a little bit high. His tail's up here, and I think maybe it needs to come down there a bit, but still in my light sketchy phase down here, so I can modify that and I can make it. I can just tweak it into the right place. And then when I think I've got it in the right place, you know, if I'm happy that that's correctly positioned, I can firm in a few of these lines here, do a few feathery strokes. Because all these feathers are made up of loads of little sub feathers, aren't they? I don't know if that's the correct term, I'm sure it's not, but they're made up of hairs. Are they hairs? I don't know. And also here, look, this is quite interesting. Look, there's no shading or no modeling in this bit at all. And look how flat it looks. Whereas here, his tail, his rump or whatever it is, rolls around, and there it's in shadow, there it's in light. So let's put a bit of tone in there. We'll do this with paint, but I just think it's important to flag up that, you know, you create form by putting in shadow and light. So if I start to put in a little bit of darkness in here, then suddenly he'll start to roll round. Here as well, you can see his back there is in light, but can you see how it gradually gets darker as it rolls around away from the light? And that tells us what shape it is. I'm going to do that with paint in a bit. Another thing that's quite distinctive about this bird, the house sparrow, he's got black wingtips here. So it might be a good idea to just get those in nice and black. And it's got these the very tip of those wings are fringed with white. So could do that. I could actually make a point of making that apparent. See? Okay. See, I think that's enough for the body. We'll come and throw a bit of paint at that in a bit. And we've got these black splashes down there. We'll put those within paint, but let's have spend a bit more time on this head, because this is where people are going to look first. They're going to have a look at his head to see what's going on. So am I sure I've got this eye in the right place? His mask comes around there like that. This is all kind of black. Yeah, I think it's not far off. Let's get a bit more detail in this eye. And not forgetting the highlight on the eye. That is really important, because that's what makes the eye pop out. What's the highlight? Let's see what a difference that makes. Anyway, we spent quite a bit of time drawing this thing. And of course, you know, you could carry on drawing and you could carry on creating the shadow and the height. Well, you can't draw the highlights. The highlights the white of the paper, but you could certainly carry on introducing a bit more value in here. You could just draw this absolutely fine. I'd be tempted to just carry on drawing this because there's lots of opportunity for making lots and lots of marks here. But I know a lot of you are sitting there with your paints at the ready. So let's throw some paint on it. Let's see if we can just enhance this with a bit of paint. It's quite muted. There's not a lot of color going on here. So I think we should try and maybe draw this, paint this I'm just going to paint it with, I'm just going to maybe take an orange, a kind of orange and a blue. Let's see. Yeah, how about this? There's my orange. Well, this is a kind of a burnt orange here. Can you see that? It's not too shiny. I'll bring it here. Somewhere where it's not reflecting so you can see the colours. Orange. Was it this one? Kitchen roll. Never go anywhere without kitchen roll. And maybe something like this, which is quite nice because orange and blue are complementary colours. So that means that when I mix the two, I'll get a nice grey. So I've got a lovely deep blue there. And I've got this burnt, oh, it's not that one, it's that one. Burnt orange here. So look, if I make a second little patch of burnt orange there, and I add some of this blue, that's going to turn that down to a nice grey, which is perfect. See, perfect. It's got a slight green tinge to it because there's probably more yellow in that, which is making the blue and which is turning the blue a little bit yellow. Here's me trying to show you on a piece of yellow paper. But if I wanted to get away from that green, all I need to do is add a little bit of orange. Sorry, if I needed to get away from the greeny tinge, I add the complementary colour of green, which is red, and that should steer me back to a neutral grey. All right, let's have a go. Let's have a go. Let's start off just by putting in some splashes of orange, because these colours here, these are really nice orangey colours. So, and I'm going to do this quick, and I'm going to do this spontaneously. I'm going to try and retain the kind of quality of the bird itself. So I'm doing this very quick. The main parts of orange here, he's got a lovely orange bit around here. So I'm going in with quite a nice strong orange. Then that fades out to the back of his head. So we know how to do that now. Remember, we just wash our brush, dry it off, and then with a little bit of clean water, just soften that edge like that. So that's enough of that. That is a nice patch of orange there. And then he's got lovely, let's use a stronger orange in there. He's got another patch of orange that comes down there and then like that. Now, there are no blue bits at all in here. It's just grey. So instead of going into my blue, I'm going to add my blue to my orange like that. And that is going to take all the heat out of that orange and steer it towards grey. See? It's already now becoming a lovely kind of neutral, well, it's almost like a neutral brown. So maybe a bit more blue in there. See now, see the difference in the colour? And I'm only painting in the shadow. I'm just putting a little hint of colour into the shadow. So what I'm doing is I'm just painting the shadow areas. Oops, a little bit strong that, but just loosening up. See, and that's slightly green. I don't know if you can see it. It's a bit green. So this grey that I've created here, which was the orange, but I've neutralized it by adding the blue, it's got a bit green. So to steer it away from the green, just a touch of red in there, and that takes the green away. And now we've got this lovely kind of neutral brown. So I'm just going to put in some shade here, put in some shadow, and start Remember we talked about that little bit going into shadow down there like that. I'm softening that edge so that it rolls over his back. I'm softening this edge here so that it rolls up his chest. I'm just starting to put in a little bit of tone around here, just around his face. And here, it almost seems a little bluer around here, so I'm going back into my blue. And I'm just starting to dash in a few little spots. And also, I'm also starting to just draw with my paintbrush as well, see? So I've got hard edges here, which kind of jar a little bit. So I'm just going in with some clean water and softening these off. A few hard edges there. Now, I've not really got any strong darks in here. So I'm going to make a very strong dark mix of this blue. Get lots and lots of colour in here, make that really dark, really quite thick. It's turning from the consistency of water into a consistency of cream. See, lots of lovely dark creamy blue there. Wash that brush out and get into my burnt orange and add that to that. See, I'm making it, it's almost like a paste, and look how dark that is. It's a really nice pasty colour, but it's kind of green. It's got a green hue. Can you see how lovely and dark it is? But it is a greeny hue, so I need to just warm it up with that little bit of complementary colour, which is red. So now I know that this lovely paste that I've got here is going to be almost black. And with that, I can start to put in a few of these markings like this. See, look how dark that is. It's much darker than the pencil. Pencil's going to be quite grey. So this really nicely brings out the markings. And then we can come and have a good look at his beak here, because we've actually, the beak, we haven't really addressed his beak yet. What I'm going to use this gloopy, rich dark to start off with. Let's get this mask in, this little mask and bib. Bib comes down there like that. Comes around here, around his eyes, around the back of his eye like that. Out there, around the back there. There's a little white spot he's got there. And I'm going to use this dark gloopy colour to get his eye in as well. So just going to paint that in there like that. Because when you're painting over watercolour, when you're painting over pencil, pencil looks a bit grey. It's a dry paler, it looks a bit dark here. But and it does actually need softening off a bit there, so I'm coming in with a clean brush. Just taking that out a little bit. bib could be bigger. Let's have a look at this beak. See how flat his beak looks there? It's not quite right. Because it hasn't got any colour in. Just blending these in a little bit because it is a bit on the... I'm putting in a few dashy strokes. I'm using my brush to kind of print with here just to give it, just to bring in a few feathery strokes. Because you know we were drawing feathers with our pencil. You can draw feathers with your brush as well. Just get that. Now his beak. Let's have a quick look at his beak. I'm going to come back into my nice rich mix that I've got there. And I think his beak, we could allow his beak to go a little bluer. Not pure blue, still got orange in it. You see how green that is? That's gone green again. A little touch of red will just cure that. A little touch of red takes that green out and leaves us with that neutral grey. Right, the beak. Look, can you see it? I don't know if you can see here, but it kind of just, it's quite bluey, isn't it? That beak is quite blue. But look, it's dark underneath here and dark along the top edge, but then it rolls into the light. So let's see if we can do that. Just looking at it, I think we can allow ourselves to go a little bluer. So nice and rich. I'm going to do the top of his beak first. I'm just going to draw in that line there. And it goes all the way into almost underneath his eye. So lots of nice colour there. And then I'm going to quickly wash that brush, take the colour out, and then just soften it a little bit. So it kind of rolls over. Just soften that edge as well. And then underneath his beak is almost solid black, but not quite, you know, just on the top of his underbeak, it's just catching the light a little bit. So again, our usual mix with a little hint of red to take the green away. Let's get this in here like this. Soften that off. And like I say, spend a bit of time on this because this is where people are going to look first. Oh. So, while we're going to look at that, that beak's pretty good now. I've got a white ring around his eye. There is a white ring around his eye, but it's not white. It needs taking down a little bit. So just a bit of neutral grey and just lose that white a bit there. It's too bright. So just looking at him now, let's have a look. Let's sit back and have a look, see what we've got. It's kind of nice. It's kind of not bad. Looking between the two, I think he might benefit from a riotous background. So I'm tempted to come in and use the same colours that I've been using and put in a little bit of background because that'll pick out the top of his head nicely and it'll also define the front of his beak. So I'm going to come back into my burnt orange and make a bit of a wash like that. Well, it's quite a strong wash because what I think I'll do, I might wet the paper first. I'm just going to wet right up to him, but I'm going to miss out. I'm going to make sure I'm not going into his body, because when I apply this paint, it's going to go where I have pre-wet the paper. Oops. Water's a bit mucky. Poor practice, but nevertheless, we will soldier on. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going right up to his beak like that. And I'm carefully painting around his beak and his bib, because bib is white. I'm not going to paint the whole lot, I'm just going to suggest it. So let's see what happens when I do this. I've no idea, but it doesn't matter because I'm in my sketchbook where I experiment. Now the background, of course, is quite green. So once I've put this in, I might go in and throw a bit of blue in as well. Because as we've seen, that blue and that yellow does create a bit of green. So you can see here where, because I'm on a white, I've wet my background. It's, look at that, look, it's kind of fizzling out like that, which is nice. A few little spits and spots. They like to do that these days. It's very fashionable. Now, what I might do here, do you see, we've got this plant in the background. I'm not going to draw these stems. I'm going to draw around the stems like that, see? So just by doing that, I've created the suggestion of that stem going off there like that. This is me painting the negative space. So I'm kind of creating. I'm creating shapes by painting around the shapes. So that's that. So into my blue here. And then just to make him.
Thank you. I've got to nip off, but great class. Thank you.
All right, Mike, thanks for being here. I shall see you next week. Just putting a bit of blue around there just to make his head pop out. And I'm softening it away, just. Do you know what? I think that's enough. I think that's just about tidied that up nicely. This is the kind of subject that you could fiddle with for a while. Start. I mean, with hindsight, I'm now looking between the two. Because this paint on here is mostly dry now, I could start to add a bit more. I think he needs warming up around the head area. So because it's dry, I can do what they call glazing now. I can just go in and add more color on top of my dry color. So yeah, just looking between the two, I've not kind of got enough of that orange around this head there. So I can do that now. I can start to add. See, it comes down here. I haven't really studied this enough, but a little bit more. Look at that. That suddenly really brought him to life. And I can glaze more orange on top of what I've got here. And that too will start to add more depth. Can you see those few little spots suddenly makes him more sparrow-like? That little helmet comes down there like that. It's nice, that bit more really sparrowifies him, doesn't it? That it's prettier birds than you imagine, really, aren't they? So a bit more red has really cheered him up. It's warmed him up a treat. On the feet as well, they're quite orangey. There. I could maybe, let's just turn down now. I could maybe darken on his underside here. Under here is quite dark. Look, I've not really gone as dark as I should, but again, with a bit of glazing, I can start to drop in a bit more shadow under here. And that gives him more form. That really rolls him over. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm going to call him done for the time being. I could fiddle for a while. But what have we got? That's not a bad little sketch, is it? It's definitely a sparrow. Definitely a sparrow. I could probably spend a bit more time. What would I address? It's funny, when it's out of focus like that, you can start to see the big shapes. He's much darker down here. See, look at the, he's almost in shadow down there. His bib, I don't know what, and his chest, oh, it's off now, it's starting to fiddle. His chest could have a little bit more 3 dimensions.
Martin, I've got to go.
All right, well, I'm keeping you all too long. I know. Nice to see you. Glad you're better.
Bye.
See you next week. Yeah, all right. I'm sure you're all thinking, why doesn't he stop? I've stopped. I'm stopping. There. Okay, everybody. That was nice. I will love you and leave you. And I'll see you all next week.